Oil, Russia's kryptonite. I am sure you remember the Soviet Union, the evil state in the movies from the 80s and 90s, which was doing the evil things to the world. Well, at least some of you do. In this video, we will talk about how oil is the very thing threatening the Russian Federation at this point. So, back to the Soviet Union. The thing about the Soviet Union was that it was very technologically advanced. Not as advanced as the US, which was its main rival by the way, but still quite a bit advanced. To remind you how technologically advanced they were the ones to first put a living dog, called Laika, into orbit around Earth. Also, the Soviets were the first country to build a full-scale nuclear power plant. The Americans lost to the Soviets in the race of putting the first human in space. It was Yuri Gagrin who first saw what our planet looked like from space. Sure, we were the first to put a man on the moon, but that is just for perspective. But all of that ended in 1991 when the Berlin Wall came down. Why are we talking about the Soviet Union again? Isn't the Soviet Union history? Yes, Russian Federation is the successor to the Soviet Union and seems to learn nothing from its own history. Because right now it is making the same mistakes which the Soviet Union did. Oil is at the root cause of what makes Russia great. It is an excellent exporter of oil and gas, and a huge chunk of its external reserves depends on its oil and petroleum products. The oil crisis in the Russian Federation is central to understanding what's going on inside Russia right now. If you can wrap your head around this particular problem, you will not have much problem understanding what is really going on. After the demise of the Soviet Union, the Russian Federation ended up inheriting those huge oil reserves and massive networks of pipelines, which the state used to dominate the energy field. Russia depends on oil for its survival, and due to this, it has been called by some as an oil company. A former US Senator, John McCain, quipped once that Russia is a gas station masquerading as a company. Basically, Russian superiority in everything is based on its oil exports. To put it in perspective, Russia is one of the top 3 crude oil producers in the world, and in 2021, its total oil imports accounted for about 14% of the world's total supply. China and Europe are Russia's biggest customers, with the EU depending on Russian oil to meet 45% of its energy needs. So, why is this a problem? Well, have you ever heard that too much of a good thing can be a bad thing? That fits in here. Russian wealth is mostly based off oil imports, and the Russians have not worked towards diversifying their economic portfolio. Saudi Arabia, in contrast, has actively worked to diversify its exports, and now looks to market itself as a tourist hotspot. To that end, it also wants to be expatriate-free in 2025. This means that almost all of the workforce will be trained enough to carry out the skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled labor which the Saudis import at this point. While Russia has most of its wealth tied in oil, this means that flux in international demands and market share will manifest as variable income. Low oil prices due to less oil demand in the global market will squander Russian fortune, since 60% of GDP is based on it. There would be some margin to increase its wealth had Russians been innovating, because they still spend 45% of their collective income on generating their oil products. Outdated oil extraction methods going back to Soviet days make the whole process very inefficient. There is a simple solution to this problem. Just invite sophisticated Western companies which would make the process more efficient. Except that this solution is not as simple. Russians are wary of Western companies, and their regulatory mechanisms are known to be unstable. Additionally, all of this hinges on having a good image in international relations. Russia's relations with its neighbors have been tense, to put it mildly. Remember Crimea, which had massive offshore oil reserves, by the way? And everybody knows what is happening in Ukraine. This in itself is antithetical to providing a conducive environment for market innovators. What's even more threatening is that the world is moving away from fossil fuel energy consumption. Due to global warming, the world is finally moving towards producing clean energy, and moving towards sustainable energy will be a death blow to economies which are dependent on oil exports. Now it makes more sense to talk about what happened in Ukraine. Ukraine had the gas pipeline hub which Russia so helplessly depends on for selling its oil and gas to Europe. Ukraine has been a key to Russian plans for gas exports. This means that a great deal depends on if the present government was pro-Russian or pro-West. Furthermore, there were many issues with Ukraine over transit fees, which became a bone of contention between the two countries. Ukraine's importance to controlling gas supply in Europe could not be denied, and its geographic importance was simply too much. In fact, Russia's dependence may be to the point that Putin has increased military tensions to divert attention away from its issues with the oil-based economy. What has ended up happening is that Europe is too angry with Russia to depend on its oil. There goes the biggest customer of Russian oil. Some European countries will still depend on Russian oil, will need Ukraine since it has the necessary infrastructure. As a result, Russia will have to look towards Asian markets to sustain itself. Do you think it's curtains out for Russia? Or will they find some ingenious way to sustain their economy? Feel free to comment down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay updated with the latest content. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.